First week of November, I attended the National Association of Energy Services Companies annual meeting in San Diego, California. As always, there is a lot of discussion around the topic of energy efficiency standards in public policy. And I was most struck by three presentations given by federal officials responsible for helping the government achieve the goal of net zero energy buildings by the year 2030. All three presenters indicated that they're going to fall short of achieving the intermediate goal of 30% reduction in energy use in their portfolio buildings by the year 2015. Their common theme was that the goal of achieving these energy efficiency standards within their buildings was that it's essentially an unfunded mandate, and that they're having problems self-funding these projects or generating enough savings to help fund the amount of savings that are required in these buildings. A little later in the afternoon, we listened to a presenter from the Rocky Mountain Institute talking about deep energy retrofits in buildings, with deep energy retrofits being defined as saving 60% or more energy from a 2003 baseline year. And based on their substantial research, they validated what the federal officials were saying, that achieving that sort of savings requires a very significant capital influx beyond what can be funded strictly out of the energy savings. And all of these presenters' findings jive exactly with what we've experienced at McClure Company with our clients, that we might be able to save anywhere from 10 to 30% in energy savings from a baseline and have an acceptable return on investment. But to go beyond those numbers, and possibly far beyond those numbers, we need a very significant capital influx. It requires enough money that these projects simply can't stand on their own financial merit. And without being able to stand on their own financial merit, the hopes of achieving deep energy retrofits across a large proportion of our building stock are pretty slim. It's really not a scalable model. Financial hurdles aside, let's talk about technological barriers. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory conducted a study in 2006. That study focused on the technical feasibility of achieving net zero energy in our existing building stock. The report indicates that only 22% of our building stock could achieve net zero energy with technologies available to them in 2005. And so the barriers are enormous, both technical and financial, to achieving the goals, the very aggressive goals set forth. And so putting emotional issues aside, I think we have to ask some difficult questions about this goal of achieving net zero energy buildings. First, where will the money come from? For federally funded projects, they can come from one source, and that is a tax base. So how could that model possibly translate into any scalable business development in the United States, where the great majority of these net zero energy projects will exhibit a negative cash flow? And then secondly, where will we get the technologies from? What technological advancements do we need in the coming years to help us achieve this goal? And finally, who will shepherd this process? Is it possible to have accountability without having some sort of national energy policy guiding the daily decisions made? So what do you think? Is the goal of achieving net zero energy by the year 2030 a legitimate public policy based on science and real analysis, or is it an unattainable goal, one that we'll look back on in 10 or 20 years and say, well, that was another interesting fad? I'd like to hear your opinion.